Ukraine's troops have made an important summer offensive breakthrough by breaching Russian lines in southern Ukraine, a key general told British media this weekend, saying he now expected faster progress in the Zaporizhzhia area. General Oleksandr Tarnavskiy, leading the southern offensive, spoke several days after Kyiv declared a strategic victory by recapturing the southern village of Robotyne. The interview came as President Volodymyr Zelensky has increasingly vocally dismissed criticism of Kyiv's counteroffensive, that has made slower gains than expected, AFP reports. "We are now between the first and second defensive lines," Tarnavskiy said. "In the center of the offensive, we are now completing the destruction of enemy units that provide cover for the retreat of Russian troops behind their second defensive line." Heavily mined territory had slowed Ukrainian troops, saying that sappers had cleaned the route by foot and at night. Tarnavskiy told The Guardian that Moscow's forces just stood and waited for the Ukrainian army. The paper quoted him as saying that Kyiv's forces are now back on vehicles and that Russia has redeployed troops to the area. "The enemy is pulling up reserves, not only from Ukraine but also from Russia. But sooner or later, the Russians will run out of all the best soldiers. This will give us an impetus to attack more and faster," Tarnavskiy said. "Everything is ahead of us." Under Tarnavskiy's command, Ukrainian troops liberated the southern city of Kherson last year. He said that when Kyiv launched its counteroffensive in June, it spent more time than we expected on demining territories. "Unfortunately, the evacuation of the wounded was difficult for us. And this also complicated our advance," he said. Tarnavskiy admitted difficult losses for Kyiv. "The closer to victory, the harder it is. Why? Because, unfortunately, we are losing the strongest and best," he said. "So now we have to concentrate on certain areas and finish the job. No matter how hard it is for all of us." On Saturday, Zelensky said shrugged off criticism of the counteroffensive. "Despite everything and no matter what anyone says, we are advancing, and that is the most important thing," he said on Telegram. "We are on the move." Ukrainian forces continued offensive operations in western Zaporizhzhia Oblast on September 2 and reportedly advanced, the Institute for the Study of War reported. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that Ukrainian forces continued offensive operations in the Melitopol western Zaporizhzhia Oblast direction. Russian millbloggers who have previously maintained that Russian forces hold positions in the southern part of Robotyne claimed that Russian forces withdrew from the southern outskirts of the settlement to unspecified positions further south. Another millblogger claimed that fighting is ongoing in forest areas south of Robotyne. Ukraine planning surprise offensives. Ukrainian Brig General Oleksandr Tarnavskiy has claimed Kyiv's troops have breached Russia's first defensive line near Zaporizhzhia after weeks of painstaking mine clearance, and that everything is ahead of us. In an interview with The Guardian, he said, "We are now completing the destruction of enemy units that provide cover for the retreat of Russian troops behind their second defensive line. The enemy is pulling up reserves, not only from Ukraine but also from Russia. But sooner or later, the Russians will run out of all the best soldiers. This will give us an impetus to attack more and faster. Everything is ahead of us. The enemy is pulling up reserves, not only from Ukraine but also from Russia. But sooner or later, the Russians will run out of all the best soldiers. This will give us an impetus to attack more and faster. Everything is ahead of us." When asked about offensive actions in other areas, The Guardian wrote that Tarnavskiy said, Ukraine was preparing other surprise offensives to drain Moscow's forces. He added, "To be successful in one direction, you always need to mislead the enemy." The main goal of the offensive near the village of Glika Novosilka had a different aim. Russia signs up 280,000 contract soldiers this year, Medvedev claims. Russia has signed up 280,000 contracted soldiers so far this year, former President Dmitry Medvedev has said. According to the Ministry of Defense, since January 1, about 280,000 people have been accepted into the ranks of the armed forces on a contract basis, including reservists, state news agency TASS quoted Medvedev as saying. Earlier this year Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said he would make major changes to the country's armed forces, boosting personnel to 1.5 million troops in the face of huge losses in Ukraine. Russia, forcibly drafting migrants. In an indicator of the problems faced by the Kremlin in recruiting enough troops, the British Ministry of Defense MOD has said Russia is forcibly drafting migrants to fight in Ukraine. In its latest daily assessment, the MOD wrote, Uzbek migrant builders in Mariupol have reportedly had their passports confiscated upon arrival and been coerced to join the Russian military. There are at least 6 million migrants from Central Asia in Russia, which the Kremlin likely sees as potential recruits. Operations, Luhansk region. Russian forces conducted offensive operations along the Kupiansk-Svatov line on September 2 and recently advanced, the Institute for the Study of War (ISW) reported. Geolocated footage published on September 1 and 2 shows that Russian forces advanced south of Vilshana, 14 kilometers northeast of Kupiansk, and southeast of Novoihorivka, 16 kilometers southwest of Svatov. A Russian millblogger claimed that Russian forces captured several Ukrainian positions north of Petropavlivka, 7 kilometers east of Kupiansk, west of Svatov toward the Oskil River, and near Sinkivka, 9 kilometers northeast of Kupiansk. Operations, Donetsk region. Ukrainian forces conducted offensive operations near Bakhmut on September 2 and advanced, the ISW reported. Geolocated footage published on September 2 indicates that Ukrainian forces have advanced near Klishivka, although these gains are likely not recent. Ukrainian Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar stated on September 1 that Ukrainian forces achieved unspecified successes near Kurdyamivka, Klishivka, and Andriivka, all 7-13 kilometers southwest of Bakhmut, which Maliar characterized as the center of hostilities in the Bakhmut direction. Operations, Zaporizhzhia region. Ukrainian forces continued offensive operations in western Zaporizhzhia Oblast on September 2 and reportedly advanced. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that Ukrainian forces continued offensive operations in the Melitopol, western Zaporizhzhia Oblast direction. Russian millbloggers who have previously maintained that Russian forces hold positions in the southern part of Robotyne claimed that Russian forces withdrew from the southern outskirts of the settlement to unspecified positions further south. Another millblogger claimed that fighting is ongoing in forest areas south of Robotyne. The General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces reported on September 3 that Russia had lost 264,660 troops in Ukraine since the beginning of its full-scale invasion on February 24 last year. This number includes 600 casualties Russian forces suffered just over the past day.